Okay, Justin, you're home for the break, so it's time to make a video for your channel. What's gonna get the most views? Wait, what? My bagged milk video only has 200 views? I thought surely it was informative enough to reach the millions at the very minimum. My Wiimm music documentary only has 300. I got a 98% that class has submitted it to. How can this be? And the custom tracker views. What will my next video be? There's gotta be something I can make that. Oh, the Wiimm 5 video has 1,000 views. Hey guys, Justin here, and I'm going to be talking about why the Mario Kart Wii community is still dying. James Charles... What was that? Okay. Welcome, boys. This is a video. Okay, I'll address the elephant in the room. I did make a Wiimm 5 dying video, but I don't actually plan on making a part 2 on the situation until I really feel it's necessary. Some of you are here because of the video, and I just want to say thank you all for the support along with the constructive criticism. If you want to hear more of what I have to say on the topic, I pinned a comment to that video clearing up a few things I learned. Along with that, I was featured in the MKW Community Podcast with Maxi and Miles to discuss the situation and the aftermath. If you're interested, I'll have it linked in the description. Setting that aside, I still want to make videos reviewing custom tracks, so that will be what the video is about today. One more note, I thought of this idea while editing where I wait until the end of the month for all the CT creations and make a video solely dedicated to the month rather than a random week or two spread out into multiple months. I was going to do just 10 custom tracks for December 2019, but I thought I might as well pull a few from November for this episode, and maybe next time we could do months in review if that would interest you guys. Today will be a longer episode since it's been a while, and I'll be covering 15 new custom tracks. The first track we're going to look at is Daisy's Palace by Joris MKW. This was not originally his track, but Joris decided to remake it. The overview says that the original Daisy's Palace is a custom track made by Vulcanist 2. The palace is located next to some mountains, which you then drive through later in the track. You can see the mountains from Maple Treeway in the background, which then may lead to Yoshi Valley. This track was the site of the first ever custom tournament called Abandoned Daisy's Palace. And then also in 2019, Joris MKW remade the track, adding lots of visual details as well as gameplay improvements. Most notably, the spiral is more smooth now. The shortcut at the end has been nerfed, and there has been a shortcut added in which can be taken with a mushroom, star, mega mushroom, bullet bill, bomb, or green and red shells. The track now uses more unique textures to make it feel more original and fresh. His remake was released on November 10th, which is actually my birthday, but that doesn't matter. But he made an update to the track 4 days later with minor KCL and KMP improvements, so that's the version we will be playing. Side note, the SES file is named Daisy's Palace, but the wiki says to put it over Koopa Cape or DS Desert Hills, so I put it over Koopa Cape, which has the file name water_course.ses. When you think of some of the best custom track creators, Joris isn't usually the first to come to mind. He's been making custom tracks for a while, but I can safely say he's massively improved over the years, and now he's become very consistent at making top-notch tracks. This is a remake that stays true to its predecessor, yet makes a 2011 track fun to race on and interesting to look at. This has stunning scenery with the background and textures, with the track looking fantastic. This remake certainly feels more unique because other than bits and pieces of Maple Treeway, this also doesn't look like any official Nintendo course, which I consider to be a really good compliment for a custom track. The ending shortcut is a little awkward to get through, but most likely it was designed that way on purpose to make it more difficult. What's more notable is the beginning shortcut that you can take with a variety of items. I've never really seen a shortcut other than Koopa Cape Shroomba where you could use a green shell to take it. Going through the door and into the fountain area was very interesting, and I'm glad Joris decided to experiment with the track a little bit. Here's where my concerns come in. Joris obviously wanted to stay true to the original, and I respect him for it, but the spiral section is still a little too awkward to go through, especially on a first run basis. The first time I went through the track, I completely missed the ramp because I didn't know how long the spiral was. Obviously you get used to it after a while, but I think a custom track should be intuitive on the very first run. So how do you go about fixing this problem? I would suggest maybe extending the ramp outwards after the spiral, so when you're going off the ramp, you're going straight. It might also help to make the ramp wider. Also, on my first run, it was a little hard to understand where to turn on the uphill section because the arrows make it seem like you have to start turning right on the hill. I feel there would also still be a problem even with the arrows removed, since it's a very tight uphill section leading straight into the turn. My suggestion would be making the hill less steep and extending outwards towards the end of the spiral more, and that way you have more time to react to the turn without needing the arrows. That's all I have to say for the track. Regardless of the few turns that were issues, I still really like the track for how it looks and how it stays true to the original. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. I don't want to give it a perfect score because it's not perfectly intuitive, but it's still incredibly impressive nonetheless. The second track we're going to look at is Dongo Cave, which was originally created by Rukasudo90, but was updated into version 1.0 by Joshua MK. All the overview says is that it takes place in a cave. Not much else to say, let's just jump in. Despite what it may seem, Joshua actually improved the original quite a bit. He severely improved the textures along with fixing its bugs, adding the shortcut and better boost panel placement along with making the boost panels look a lot nicer. He also added the dark leaf piles, which I thought were really cool. This track still has a long way to go though. It's just not really interesting. There's nothing of interest in the background with just fire gazers in random places. The track is also not that interesting to drive, especially in those long straightaways that take way too long. A very long boost panel is also generally not a good idea for a custom track. Even with the leaf piles, there's still a noticeable lack of action on the track as well, with the road being that wide and that being your only obstacle. And while the one shortcut is nice, the track could probably use at least one more to make things interesting. I don't know if there's much else to say about this one, since I think the layout also needs a total revamp to become more interesting. I'm done with the track for now though, and I'm going to be giving it a 4 out of 10. I guess it still works as a track, but it just doesn't interest me whatsoever. The third track we're going to look at is Parallel Purgatory by J8-Bit Forager and Nintendo Yoshi. The overview says it's inspired by Ghost Valley 3 from Super Mario Kart and Banshee Boardwalk from Mario Kart 64. There are many spooky and mysterious elements, along with an abyss effect similar to the core location from Undertale. Let's take a look at the track. In terms of visuals, this track is stunning. It really captures the ghostly theme very well. I really like the floor changing color, as I think that adds a lot to the track along with the interesting layout. The visuals are impressive, but there are a few problems, mainly with how the track drives. The boardwalk section in the air is surprisingly difficult and is just not intuitive. It's very bumpy with random movements, making it so you are unable to tell where you're supposed to go. The road going into the boost panel at the end is also strange and can lead to going over and falling off very easily. I'm also confused as to why there is the little split path at the start, since I'm pretty sure the right path is always faster. If I were the track creators in this scenario, I might honestly just completely redesign the layout while keeping all the background elements and objects the same because of how good the visuals are. If I had to give it a rating, it would be tough considering that there was obviously a lot of effort put into the track, but it's just not that fun to race on in the second half. I'm gonna settle at an 8 out of 10. I guess if 10 out of 10 means put it in CTGP, then it just has to fix the boardwalk section for it to be a really great track in my eyes. The fourth track we're going to look at is Island Circuit by Potato Man 44. The overview says the track takes place on an island with water surrounding it. There is a split in the road near the beginning of the track, with one route being a shortcut. The .scs file is named Island Circuit, so I'm going to be putting it under Mario Circuit, which has the file name castle_course.scs. So Potato Man 44 is clearly new to making custom tracks, and I commend him for trying since others might give up during the process. One quick suggestion though to anyone watching, and if Potato Man is watching, I suggest you really try and refine your track until it's perfect before uploading it to the wiki, because most people would probably see a track like this and wonder why the uploader even bothered putting it up there. But I want to offer some positives and then go step by step on how you go about fixing this track. What I most like here is the layout. It's nice, dynamic, has good turns, except some are incredibly sharp, and it's simple, and I like simple tracks. Now here's what I would do. Start by upscaling the track. It's too small, and making it bigger would fix some of the turns and make some roads less thin. I would also change some textures, since right now they look a little bland and boring. I might also change the level of the ground so that it sits above the water a little bit so it isn't as easy to fall off, maybe with a hill connecting it to the water. Add a few background elements to spice things up maybe, like an island or a few in the distance. All the ramps in the same spot might be a bit much, I would reduce the number. The road being so slippery can be a bit annoying, and of course fix the water so you can't drive on it. I listed a lot of things, but I really do want to see Potato Man 44 improve, since it seems he's determined to keep making tracks. And yes, I did find an ultra shortcut. I actually tried to get the fastest time possible on this track because of how fun it was to do the shortcut. My fastest time was 25 seconds, .879, which I spent way too long to try and get. If anyone wants to try and beat me, go ahead. I was actually thinking of doing time trial competitions for some of the tracks I feature, like glitch times or maybe just straight up tracks. I don't know how interested you guys would be in actually participating in them, but I might try it out next time if this video reaches 10,000 likes, guys. Smash that! Anyways, let's give this track a rating. So I'm gonna just give it a 1.5 out of 10. Sure, it gave me a lot of enjoyment and it has potential, but in its current state, it does not really drive like a track, and I don't imagine a distribution would use it, though it isn't the worst for a first attempt. The fifth track we're gonna look at is Sandy Strait by Optilizer. The overview says that this is Optilizer's first custom track. It is a passage in an intergalactic circuit, which explains the UFO-like towers. The shortcut has two ways, which the player will need to figure out. It also comes with a lot of credits to numerous people. Now the track is supposed to go over JC and Peach Beach, but something else went over that track already in the video, so I decided to put it over Daisy Circuit.
What? No?
So this track has a nice and simple layout with good shortcuts and an interesting enough background. It's got some nice ideas as well, with the track going into a ditch with rideable sides. It also has a decent amount of challenge and objects on the track. Now some problems: I feel like the track, specifically when it gets into the ditch sections, is rather narrow and should probably be opened up a bit. There might also be a respawning issue for certain people in the room at this section, as demonstrated by the Daisy and Luigi, but that also might be a CPU route issue, which isn't as bad. The rocks might be a bit much, especially in the narrow parts of the track, so either they should be smaller, sit against the wall, or the road should become wider. And while the idea of having 2 ramps at the end is interesting, I think it would work better as just one. I don't have much to say on the track, but it's simple and good to race on. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's not insanely good by any means, but for a first effort, it's really good, even if it's been getting updated for the past 3.5 years. The 6th track we're going to look at is Tyler Circuit, also made by Potato Man 44. The overview says the track is a tribute to the author's favorite band, 21 Pilots. It features many ramps, fire bars, Goombas, a chain chomp, and a section with trees. The file name for that .ses is Tyler Circuit, so I decided to put it over Moo Meadows. Why? I don't know. Its file name is farm_course.ses.
What?
I guess it works more as a track compared to his other effort, but I sadly didn't enjoy it as much. Granted, it's because this one actually worked, but let's talk about why this doesn't work. The main glaring problem this track has is it's way too long. This track could pass off as a 1 lap, and definitely should be 2 laps at most. It also has textures that don't make sense. Wood on the ground, Yoshi egg walls, etc. And despite having a multitude of objects, it's just boring. It's concentrate, narrow straightaways with next to no deviations going up and down. The theming is hard to pick out here as well. Fire bars on the ground, chain chomps, lots of trees on wood next to completely empty grass. And I will address this. Why do some of the textures glitch out on this track like that? It's because every texture in the track has to have dimensions that are power of 2s, otherwise they won't work. While it may come off as cynical, I would completely scrap this track as an idea since I don't see it working. the Island Circuit track has a lot more going for it. Now let's move on to a segment I like to call Unintended and Notable Shortcuts. This track has one respawn and it's right at the start, so if you fall off anywhere, you respawn at the start. This track also has 3 key checkpoints, so if you hit the last key checkpoint before the finish and fall off, which you are able to do anywhere on the track, you can skip a large chunk of the track. That's it for the Unintended and Notable Shortcut segment. Back to you, Justin. Thank you, Justin. Let's give this a rating. I'm gonna go with a 2 out of 10. It's better than Island Circuit because it's actually playable as a track, but if I had to choose one for Potato Man to work on, it'd be Island Circuit. This doesn't have the potential that the other one does. This is just too long and too boring of a track to be enjoyable. The 7th track we're going to look at is Forest Fortress by the Dora 7Z and Wiimm. Forest Fortress, say that 5 times fast. The overview says it's a custom track created by the Dora 7Z. He originally uploaded a video of this track as an unfinished preview due to the lack of motivation to finish it. 4 years later, Wiimm updated the campaign and minimap, and he released the track to the public. Not much else to say here, let's dive in.
Oh, what? No? Oh! That's cool! Oh, yeah!
So this is technically an old track, but only released recently. Does it hold up after all these years? Well, it's alright, but could use a few improvements. Let's start with the positives. It gives me Big World Wave vibes, which is a good thing. With interesting segments and changing segments all the way through, I'll go through all of them right now. The open space out of the bridge is nice and quick, though could probably use a few more trees or background elements and an arrow on the right turn. I do like the bridge idea though. The cave section after I feel is a little long to have a sort of lackluster appearance, and I don't think the water gives you a boost like it should. Otherwise, it's alright. The ramp after the cave is very strange and should definitely be changed. I'm not a huge fan of the texturing after the cave, as it looks rather uninspired with not that interesting of colors. I also feel like it should not have gone on for as long as it did. The rainbow cylinder is hell for my eyes, but the water section after is alright. The jungle area is interesting, but could use better tree and boost panel textures. What this track feels like to me is a watered down version of Big World Way. It plays pretty good despite some sections that drag on for a little too long. Onto the scores, I'm going to give this track a 7.5 out of 10. Visually, it could be a lot better, and there are a few layout issues, but otherwise it's pretty good. The 8th track we're going to look at is Secret Athletic House by Jolteon and Wiimm. The overview says that it's Jolteon's first custom track. Wiimm fixed the course model and imported missing files. I've never seen a secret athletic house. Maybe it's because I'm not athletic and it's supposed to be a secret. Whatever, let's just look at the track.
Oh, what?
It's alright for a first track, I'll give it to Jolteon. He certainly has a long way to go, but I do like his effort here. However, this track has one glaring issue. It is way too confusing. There are so many different turns and paths to this track, and they don't make sense sometimes. Let's take this section by section. The start is alright, but the cannon shortcut should either be removed or nerfed to lose the cannon and create less of a tilt on the road. The path through all the yellow blocks is too narrow at points, and the building after should just be one large path. The mushroom multiple road section thingy is way too confusing with too many options. It needs to be reduced and the paths need to be clear and easy to take. The road afterwards is too bumpy and hard to drive. The straightaway after is alright, but the shortcut doesn't make much sense because the initial circle is off-road, but the branch back to the main road is regular road despite still being the same texture. The sort of house building thing is alright, but probably doesn't need the left path going up since no one would ever take it most likely. It's out of the way and probably slower. There is more thin road through yellow blocks, which I'm still not a fan of, and then there's some floating 2D road afterwards. It should definitely be connected to something since it breaks the immersion. There's also invisible road underneath it, which I am really not a fan of since it's not intuitive in the slightest. It leads to a path inside the wall, which is interesting, but there should definitely be a different way to enter it without having to resort to invisible road. And then the ending for the top section is alright. I know I listed a ton of negatives, but that's because this track has quite a bit of potential. Other than a few textures, most of it looks nice and the layout is dynamic and interesting. I'm gonna give the track a 6 out of 10. Nice layout, but could definitely improve. The 9th track we're gonna look at is Saltwater Lake made by Bear. The overview says it is a custom track designed by Remurin, who came up with the concept and created by Bear. It is a successor to Saltwater Swamp, as it features a new layout with some new elements, such as a cave section and additional waterfalls. I've never played Saltwater Swamp, but I don't imagine that will affect my review too much. The site also has multiple credits. Let's take a look at the track.
Oh, what? Oh! No! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah!
Bear is becoming incredibly consistent with his tracks. They all look nice, especially this one, and while not the most interesting design-wise, it really doesn't affect my opinion on this track. It straight up just looks like Nintendo made it. The colors and textures are really nice. It's not a flat track, which is always good to see. It's got enemies to dodge, and it's fun to play and race on. Some critiques: I'm not confident that I think this should be 5 laps. I think 4 might make more sense, or even reducing it down to 3 laps, honestly. A short track isn't a bad track. This is also very minor, but I think this is one item said too many, and I think the second one could be removed. One last thing, as a lap 3 shortcut, or lap 5 I should say, going to the right early on the boost pad is very easy and can consistently get a lap count without a shroom, which could be a problem for online races. Other than that though, the track is great. There's actually an Easter egg on it that I found, but I won't spoil it for the rest of you. It should be no surprise that I give this track a 10 out of 10. It should definitely go into CTGP, and I'm excited for what Bear has in store next, though I hope he decides to take more risks, because this track felt very safe other than the visuals. The 10th track we're going to look at is MSUSA Grand Canyon by Holland. The overview says it is a remake of the track with the same name in the N64 version of the game Mickey's Speedway USA. Firstly, the model was ripped, then the author textured the whole model and added extra stuff, for instance, the fully modeled tires and a cleaner bridge. This is the first track from the author that successfully added vertex colors. I've never played Mickey's Speedway USA, but I will probably take a look at the video of the track to see how it compares. From what I can tell, Holland is a pretty good custom track creator. He's definitely gotten better since he first started, and yes, this stays true to the original track, looking identical and being shaped the exact same. It's got a nice design and is textured well, and works pretty well as a track. My main issue with the track though is the KCL. Holland decided to make the darker sand off-road, which I am not a fan of. I would much prefer it if it were all drivable, or at least the off-road was more clearly defined. Some off-road patches look like there's supposed to be shadows, but then they are actually off-road once you drive into them. It really heavily impacted my opinion, honestly, since it felt like you had no space to drive. There's also these 2 turns that are way too tight. It's almost impossible to pull off well. Other than that, I mean, the track is pretty good. It's sort of hard to drive and tell where you should and shouldn't, and it doesn't really have any shortcuts, but it looks good and has an interesting dynamic layout. I'm going to give the track a 7.5 out of 10. The drivability of the track really affects the score, but without the turns and random off-road, I could see it fitting into CGGP. The 11th track we're going to look at is Skyscraper Circuit by Poochie95. The overview says it's its first custom track. It takes place in a city with many advertisements and bouncy mushrooms. Let's take a look at the track. track does a few interesting things, especially for a first track. The idea with the road surrounded by boost panels I don't think I've ever really seen before, and being able to land on a building at the end is pretty cool. This track has a good amount of challenge with objects on the track and an interesting enough background with objects off of it. It also has decent shortcuts varying in skill level. Now let's move on to the critiques. If this is a secret Easter egg then it's alright, but this room would be cool to use as a shortcut if you were able to make it across this gap. Even if it was slower, it could give you a guaranteed good item, and so there would still be some worth to it. I also think some of the object spam doesn't really work, like there was so little trees on the ground, yet tons of pipe in this one starting area, and way too many thwomps in that one specific place. It would probably be better if there were only like 3 big ones that thwomp onto boost panels in that section. I also think the grass shouldn't be completely flat, and to add interest, add a few hills here and there. I'm also not a huge fan of the row of mushrooms. I wouldn't know what to replace with it, but to me it feels like an afterthought. Finally, I'm not a huge fan of the road texture. It doesn't really fit in for at least the pre-mushroom section. This in general could use a bit of a visual upgrade. Other than that, it drives pretty well and has a good layout. I'm going to be giving the track a 7 out of 10. Really good for a first effort, and I hope to see Poochie improve his custom track creating capabilities. The 12th track we're going to look at is Canyon City 3 by Jasper and ZPL Gaming. To clear up any confusion, Jasper is Spyro from the previous episodes. The overview says it is a revamp of K-Hacker 35000's Canyon City. Not only does it change some parts of the layout, such as removing dead ends, adding arrows to every turn, and adding shortcuts, but it also gives a massive visual and gameplay overhaul. The track also contains elements from Moonview Highway, such as skyscrapers, rock-like hills, and some grassy areas, as well as less cars and trucks. Let's take a look at this remake.
Oh, what? No? Oh, no? That's it! Woohoo!
So honestly, I was really sick and tired of custom track distributions using the old Canyon City tracks just because of how old the track is, since it just wasn't fun to play. However, this remake is incredible, which is no surprise considering Jasper and ZPL made it. This looks phenomenal, and despite keeping true to the original, actually plays well, which is insane, even if the minimap still looks crazy. It opens up the track well, since the old versions were completely boxed in and doesn't have crazy car routes, which is always nice. Is it perfect? No. Here's my one problem. The square section here always seemed like an issue to me in older versions of the track, since there was only one way to go, and despite there being so many other routes in this one section, they were all undoubtedly slower and pointless to take. That fast route, along with all the other slow routes, are still here in this version. What I'd recommend to Jasper and ZPL is to close off the fastest route and make the players take some of the other routes so that the section doesn't feel as pointless. You could also cut that part off and then make it a grass cut into the fountain area for the second entrance to add more shortcuts, since this doesn't really have many other than the grass ones that don't really save a lot of time. Other than that, 2 laps could be a consideration here, since they are 1 minute laps if going fast, but honestly 3 laps isn't that bad for the track. Despite the issues I said, I'm still giving the track a 10 out of 10 because it's definitely CTGP worthy. I'd like to see the change made to make the track more intuitive and interesting, but regardless, this is still amazing, and I want to give ZPL and Jasper the recognition they deserve. Good job once again, guys. The 13th track we're going to look at is Family Beach by Mr. Perfect MKW. The track is a real dice roll, and you'll see why. The overview says currently the track is scaled much too small, so it is not playable at all. So you may be wondering why I'm even bothering to try and review it, because I got curious and there's no video attached to this. So let's take a look. I understand now. I'm gonna suggest something to the viewers, and I guess Mr. Perfect MKW if he is watching. Playtest your tracks before uploading to the wiki, and make sure you make any corrections if there is something very wrong. For critiques, I'd suggest upscaling the track. Yeah, I'm gonna give the track a 0 out of 10. I'd give more suggestions, but it's hard when the track is too small to really focus on anything else. I guess better texturing might help. Track roads should be 3,000 to 4,000 meters wide. That's a good size to have. The 14th track we're going to look at is Delfino Beach by ZBL Gaming. It's a remake based off the track Delfino Park made by Ninyoda 1. It was initially titled the same name as ZBL's remake, but was later changed to Delfino Park. The overview says this remake was made in late 2018, designed and modeled by Jasper. In early 2019, the model was then given to ZBL Gaming to make into an SES file. In December 2019, the track was then finished with help from Queely. I did play the original Delfino Beach by Ninyoda 1. It was alright but not spectacular by any means. Let's see how this remake holds up.
No. Oh, what?
To be honest, I'm underwhelmed by this remake. I want to show the original track and go through some things I like about the original. Obviously the remake looks a lot better since Ninyoda was not the best with his textures. However, I think this track really shines in the design department. For one, it has an interesting background to look at the whole way through. I also like how it goes up on both turns with the tilt and how it boxed in the entire 270-degree turn. I thought that was interesting. The wavy section right next to the completely flat version I thought was also cool, even though I'm not a fan of how the right path ends. Here's where the problems begin. 2 complete 180 turns without any space to make them. They're unnecessarily hard to do, and the remake decided to keep them. But the ending to the original is interesting with the piranha plants guarding the fast road. While the remake is still a better track than this, it feels incomplete. It doesn't have that interesting of a background, and the setting doesn't make any sense. Where is this town? Why are they completely surrounded by water? Who would put a town with so little houses here? Also, the finish line is right on the turn, which isn't the best design-wise, since lap 3 people will try and go to the left as quickly as they could to finish. The 270-degree turn over the grass doesn't make sense, since there is grass there seemingly for a shortcut, but it is also fall boundary, so you can't get down there anyway. There should be a wall on the left where you first land, then you should be able to cut it after the first turn. Also, the fall boundary to get onto that turn makes no sense. You can completely skip that turn whether with a respawn glitch, landing under the fall boundary, or even going over the fall boundary. There's also another sizable cut with respawning later in the track. ZPL has set his standards very high, and this just doesn't feel like his best effort at this point. He has something going here, but changes need to be made to make this an excellent track. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Definitely not CTGP ready yet, but more background elements, better turns, fixing the respawns, and fixing fall boundaries would help make this track perfect. The 15th and final custom track we're going to look at is Glacier Mine by Ishiyama263. All the overview says is what I just told you. When you download the track, you are given a 1-lap version and a 2-lap version. I've actually been keeping up with the progress of this track as I've been intrigued, and 1 lap of this is like 2.5 minutes, so that's the version I'll be reviewing. 2 laps of this track is way too long, but I guess I should be saving that for when I start reviewing the track, so let's get into it.
Oh, what? No? Oh! Oh, yeah! Woohoo!
Yes, this is the same Ishiyama that was in episode 2. This is the same Ishiyama that had one key checkpoint and broken cameras in his track. And here he is, releasing one of the best custom tracks I have ever seen. I have never seen such a massive improvement in such a short amount of time. He said in a comment on one of his videos that this took him a month to make because he was out of work for a forklift accident. Not that I want to wish him into an injury again to create great custom tracks, but this is insane. The theming is phenomenal. The track is fully functional. The layout is intricate and easy to follow. There's a good amount of shortcuts. There is a good amount of difficulty. There are well-themed objects placed throughout the track. It's complex yet intuitive to beginners. The textures are amazing. This track is stunning. I have almost no criticism for this track, except for minor nitpicks that could be so easily fixable. The first being the waterfall is actually incredibly strong and catches me off guard most times I play it, so it should probably be reduced to the force of the water in Koopa Cape. And this split branch part is sudden and nothing really warns you that it's happening. Other than that, this is phenomenal. I'm just gonna say it now, 10 out of 10. I can't imagine being looking at this track and not putting it into CTGP. I'm a big fan now, and I can't wait for what Ishiyama has in store for his next custom track. Amazing work, man. And that wraps up this episode of Custom Track Review. One final note, if you're interested, I actually released my own custom track recently named Block Cave. It's been 2 years since I last released a track, so if you'd like to check it out, I'd have it linked in the description underneath the rest of the tracks. Is it a 10 out of 10? No, but I wanted to create a simple track that was fun to drive. Regardless, thank you for watching the video, and peace out.